Section 55 of Christmas and Christmas Lore. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit librivox.org. Recording by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. Christmas and Christmas Lore by Thomas G. Crippen. Candlemas. According to the law of Moses, as understood 1900 years ago, every firstborn son was to be presented before the Lord and redeemed by an offering. This was usually done on the 40th day from the birth of the child, until which time the mother was accounted ceremoniously unclean. Our Lord, as became him who was all things obedient to the law, was duly presented after the custom of the law, and old Simon, who in all likelihood had heard the strange story which the shepherds made known abroad concerning this child, recognized in him the long-awaited consolation of Israel, the promised light to lighten the Gentiles. It was quite in accord with the pious sentiment of early Christian ages that this recognition should be commemorated by an anniversary which should terminate the Christmas cycle, as Holy Thursday does that of Easter. We may accept the authority of Barnabas. This anniversary was observed at Jerusalem as early as AD 385, and at Rome during the pontificate of Gelasius 492 to 496. In the Danubian province it was observed about 500, at Constantinople about 542, in Gaul in 650, and in England it was mentioned by Beda early in the 8th century. By the Greeks it was called Hypopani, i.e. the Feast of Meeting. In the West it was the Feast of the Presentation, or of S.S. Simon and Anna, or, among the more ritually disposed, the Purification of the Blessed Virgin. But the prophetic words of Simon suggested another title, the Feast of Lights, of which adaptations and variants are found in many languages. In German it is Lichtmess, in Danish Candlemas, in English Candlemas, in Old French Candelier, in Modern French La Chandelier, and in Italian Candelora, Candelera, or Santa Maria Candelaria. These names and the associated customs remind us that from of old the use of lamps and candles was customary, though not needed for lighting, yet symbolically or as a token of rejoicing. It was disproved by Tertullian in the 3rd century and by Lactantius in the 4th, but in the 5th century it seems to have been specially appropriated to the Feast of the Presentation. Several authorities represent it as Christianized adaptation of the Roman Lupercalia, when torches and candles were carried in honor of Ceres and Proserpine. However, this may have been in the earlier half of the 8th century. There was at Rome on Candlemas Day a procession with candles, in which the Pope and his deacons wore black vestments, and on that day Gloria in Excelsis was not sung. On this custom we have found no explanation. As to the practice of the Middle Ages, it is related that on this day the Church blessed her candles for the whole year, and made a procession with blessed candles in the hands of the faithful. The blessing invoked on the candles was that in whatsoever place they shall be lighted or put, the devil may depart, and tremble and fly away with all his ministers from that habitation, and not presume any more to disturb it, etc. The candles thus blessed, when used in procession, were commonly lighted from one very large one, which in Spain was kindled with new fire, i.e., fire newly struck from flint. The candle ends were frequently preserved as charms. The practice at Rome, about the year 1820, is thus described. The benediction was given by the Pope in person, he being attended by the cardinals in robes of crimson and gold. After the blessing, His Holiness distributed candles with his own hand to all present, cardinals, bishops, abbots, priors, canons, etc., down to the humblest officials of the church, going up singly and kneeling to receive them. The candles were then lighted, and the Pope, seated in his chair, was carried round the ante-chapel in procession with chanting. After this, the Pope and cardinals retired, resumed their ordinary dresses, and proceeded with the usual mass. Candle bearing on Candlemas Day was discontinued in the Church of England by the Order of Council in 1548, but the more conservative of the clergy long persisted in marking the day by use of an exceptionally large number of tapers. A Puritan preacher in 1628 declared that on Candlemas Day last past Mr. Cousins, in renewing that popish custom of burning candles to the honor of Our Lady, busied himself from 2 of the clock in the afternoon till 4 in climbing long ladders to stick up wax candles in the cathedral church of Durham. The number of all the candles burnt that evening was 220, besides 16 torches, 60 of those burning tapers and torches standing upon and near the high altar, as he calls it, where no man came nigh. The Mr. Cousins referred to is John Cousins, afterwards Bishop of Durham. A contributor to the Gentleman's Magazine in 1790 narrates that a few years before, being at Ripon on the Sunday before Candlemas, he observed that the collegiate church was one continued blaze of light all the afternoon, from an immense number of candles. Candlemas is one of the Scottish quarter days, and was marked by some traditional observances now obsolete, to the origin or significance of which a clue may perhaps be found in the fact that Candlemas Eve coincides with the festival of St. Bride or Bridget, the friend of St. Patrick and founder of the first nunnery in Ireland. The connection of the Celtic Church in Ireland with that in Scotland, especially the Western Isles, was very intimate, and many Scottish churches were dedicated in the names of Irish saints. In some of the Western Isles, the women of each household dressed a sheaf of oats in a woman's apparel, laid it in a large basket with a club beside it, and just before going to bed cried 3 times, "Brood is come, brood is welcome." If in the morning there should appear among the ashes what might be thought the impression of Brood's club, this would be the omen of a prosperous year, and vice versa. Brood can scarcely be other than Saint Bride. The usual dwelling of St. Bridget was Kildare, and there, for several hundred years, a perpetual fire was maintained, nominally in her honor, but really, there can be little doubt, as a survival of pre-Christian practice. The notion of a perpetual fire seems related to the custom of rekindling the remains of the Yule log on Candlemas Eve, i.e., on St. Bride's Day, quenching it at midnight and reserving it to kindle the log next year. Moreover, in most schools in the south of Scotland, it was customary to kindle a Candlemas blaze, i.e., a bonfire, not infrequently a growing furze bush, if found conveniently near, would be set on fire, and the boys and girls presented to the schoolmaster donations of sixpence or a shilling, more or less according to the ability of the parents or the popularity of the dominie, as a contribution towards the Candlemas blaze. The boy and girl who brought the most blaze were acclaimed as king and queen of Candlemas. They were crowned, enthroned, and royally saluted. The whole school was regaled with biscuits and whiskey punch, the remainder of the day being spent in games and merry-making. One need not be fanatical teetotaler to be of opinion that the best thing about this custom was its discontinuance. Football matches, parish against parish or married against single, were customary in Scotland, and were keenly contested. Several local and domestic customs have also been reported as relating to the day, mostly connected with candles. The weather, too, was deemed to be indicative of that of the ensuing season, mostly by the rule of contraries. One of several Scottish weather proverbs runs thus: If Candlemas day be fair and clear, there'll be 12 winters in the year. In England, outside of purely ecclesiastical circles, Candlemas is now scarcely recognized except as marking the definite end of the festive season, when, as before directed, the last remains of the Christmas decorations should be removed. Then, as Herrick bids us, end now the white loaf and the pie, and let all sports with Christmas die. End of section 55.